These principles live on. They're principles of truth, and if they're lived, you can expect certain outcomes.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast.
Minisode.
Welcome to another minisode, another podcast. My name is Dustin Harris. Thanks for joining me. I've got an exciting series coming up. I can't wait to introduce you to it, but first I want to introduce you to Now Software. If you've not been introduced previously, welcome. Welcome to a new way of managing your appraisal office, whether you're a one-man show or multiple dozens of appraisers. This is a great software to keep track of everything in your business. It's anow.com, anow.com. All right, folks, I'm going to introduce to you a new series. I think maybe this is the first time that we've done a series of this length here on the Appraiser Coach Podcast. I'm super excited about what's going to be coming your direction. I'm going to call it the Principles of Prosperity series. And over the next several weeks, you will be introduced to, and intermingled, by the way, with other full episodes. These are minisodes. They typically come out on Wednesdays. Our full episodes come out on Sundays. But over the next several weeks, I want to share with you some guiding principles in my life, specifically guiding principles with regard to finances. Now, many of these principles can be applied to life, to relationships, to health, to all kinds of things because they are principles. Now, let me pause here just a moment and explain in my mind, and this is just my definition. You won't find this definition probably anywhere else, even on the internet. My definition of a principle. A principle to me is an everlasting truth. It is an idea or process that if followed, no matter the time, whether you be in caveman or the space age, no matter the circumstances. Now, there are exceptions, of course, to all of this, which I'll caveat here in just a moment. But these principles live on. They're principles of truth. And if they're lived, you can expect certain outcomes. That, to me, is a principle. It's not just an idea. It's not just a thought. It especially is not just an opinion. I refer often here on the podcast, in my mastermind meetings, in my all-star team, you'll hear me use these terms frequently about the principles of prosperity. But I often get asked, well, what are those? Do you have a list, Dustin? And the answer is yes, I do. And that list continues to evolve. In fact, the principles of prosperity, I don't think in general change. Again, truth is truth, no matter the time, no matter the age, no matter the circumstance. But my understanding is constantly changing / growing. My understanding is expanding. In fact, when I first developed my first list of the principles of prosperity, there were 12 of them. In fact, I utilized those principles as I grew my appraisal business. And those have expanded now to, I think I've got 16 at this point. And we're going to go over those over the next few weeks. And by the way, that does not mean there's only 16 principles of prosperity. If that were true, then there would only be 12 principles of prosperity because that's what I started with. These are simply ideas. I want to share with you where these ideas of truth came from and what formatted this following of such principles. But first I want to pause here and remind you of Now Software. Now, of course, is the software out there saving you time, saving you energy. Folks, can you imagine a one-stop shop for really all the business decisions that you make? Because you need to know your finances. You need to know your numbers. You need to know what's going on. Well, guess what? Now is that company. Often I get asked, well, Dustin, I'm only a single person entity. Do I really need something so elaborate? Yeah. Folks, even more so than if you're running a big company. Let me repeat that. Even more so. Why? Because you don't have time to crunch numbers. You are too busy. As an appraiser / business owner, you need Now Software. And right now, you can try it for 30% off for the first 3 months, folks. 90 days, 30% off if you use the coupon code podcast30, podcast30. It's anow.com, anow.com. Welcome back to the program, everybody. Dustin Harris introducing to you a new series over the next few weeks called The Principles of Prosperity. Let me share with you briefly where these principles came from. You may know my story. I'm going to tell it in brief. I spent the first 12 years of my business running it like everybody else. Why? Because that's what I knew. That's all I knew. I learned from my mentor, and he learned from his mentor, and on and on and on, right? And we pass these ideas of how to run a quote-unquote successful business, or let's just say sustainable business, from our mentors and from those around us, our peers. And if, as the saying goes, you do what everybody else does, you'll get what everybody else got. And that's what I got for 12 years, meaning I was living paycheck to paycheck. And literally, folks, this is no exaggeration. I was working 60, 70, sometimes 80 plus hours per week doing it. It was insane, and it was not fun, and it wasn't enjoyable. And yes, I was paying my bills, but only barely. When I say I was living paycheck to paycheck, I wasn't joking. I really was. There came a point when I woke up and said, Dustin, is this really what you want to spend your life doing? And frankly, I did not like my life very much right then. I enjoyed appraising, but it wasn't my favorite, especially with the amount of time and energy and effort that I was putting in versus what I was getting out. And I knew there was a better way. And so I set out on a quest. We actually got rid of our TV, and I set out on a quest to study successful people. And I started with the founding fathers, and I moved into people that lived before the 1700s and into the 1800s, and people like Carnegie and Firestone and so many individuals that I could name off. And I learned so much. And then I moved into the more modern age. What makes people successful? People who are living that I look up to as being successful individuals. And by the way, success to me is not defined as rich. Money may be a part of it, and we're going to talk about that in this series. But it's not just about being rich. It's about being rich on so many other levels, right? With your health and your relationships and your freedom. That's a big one. And I decided that I would embark on this study and start to develop a list of what I felt was pretty much applied to any successful person, right? When I saw principles of prosperity, I didn't just see them in people that were dead, but I saw them in people that were living as well. These were principles that lived on. And for the most part, not that every single person employed every single one of these principles, but in general, I saw a pattern. And this pattern I started to apply to my own business, and I went within a period of about 3 years to being, well, like I explained before, paycheck to paycheck and making very little money, to working way less hours, less than 40 hours a week, and making 3, 4, 5 times what I was making before. I'm now making 10 plus times and working 10 plus times less than I was before. Because, and folks, this is where I point it to. Now, it's details, right? But these are the principles that I live by. So over the next several weeks, I want to share with you these principles. My goal is to keep these mini-sodes. They're called mini-sodes for a reason. I want them to be bite-sized. They're not going to be details. They're going to be overviews. And yes, we'll go into a little bit of detail, but my goal is to keep them at less than 10 minutes. We're going to try that. So join me. Over the next several weeks, I'm going to share with you the guiding principles of success that I've utilized, that I have found success with. I hope you'll join me. I can't wait to share them with you. I also can't wait for you to join me in the All-Star team, which is where we talk about and utilize these principles in full. Check it out. Going to my website, theappraisercoach.com/memberships. We'll see you there.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.